Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 547 on Tuesday, the 17th of October, 2023. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week we'll be apologising to those that run along to the first part. You might want to start sprinting now. In new car news, we bring you a lot, and one car that will hurt your eyes. We're so sorry. And in points of interest, we grab our six strings and start nibbling on sponge cake. And we go straight into new news. And this is from the US of A, but it is interesting enough for us to share for those of us who are in the UK. The Department of Justice in the US is suing eBay for selling rolling coal devices. That's those ones that allow the pickups to...
that so doesn't work with your accent.
To spew out all the black smoke as they accelerate away and intimidate EVs and Prius and everything else that you see on the YouTubes.
And what is a rolling coal, sir? Yes, this could hit quite badly.
Yeah, there's a 61-page submission of complaint to the courts from the Department of Justice, and they reckon 343,000 illegal devices have been sold on eBay. And if eBay was found guilty and fined to the maximum, that's $5,580 per item sold, which could take it to the region of $2 billion in fines.
Obviously, it's never going to reach that.
No.
I mean, it's not Volkswagen.
Yes, it's a mainly US company.
Yeah. The challenge here really is that this will get settled, but for eBay, this is like a game of Splat the Rat. As soon as they work out a new word combination to ban, or a picture to ban, or whatever, at least one or two other new word combos are going to pop up, and it's a case of trying to work out what the heck those are and stop those, and it just gets harder and harder and harder. Yes,
but no, they don't. We don't see them being hauled. I was going to say over the coals, but that's a poor choice.
Hauled over the rolling coals, yeah.
We don't see them being brought into court over things like foodstuffs that they shouldn't sell or pets and things like that.
I think it's an easy one to pick on.
Yeah, and should rightly be stopped. To be just to back this up, we're not excusing the selling of this, by the way, just to be clear.
Oh, goodness, no. I was telling you that just last week on my way to the office, I was sitting in traffic and there were two trucks, two tractor units, semi-trucks. And every time they moved off in traffic, they were spouting 10-foot tall black smoke. I just don't know what they thought they were playing at by over-fueling to that level. And it just seemed ridiculous. And I just thought, in Europe, that just would not happen. It simply would not. It wouldn't be tolerated. They'd maybe get 2 or 3 days and then someone would you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no reason for it, by the way. It's not that these were particularly special trucks. It's not that US trucks can carry or need to be more powerful than European trucks. It's the opposite. They can only carry the same amount payload. That works out about the same amount as any of our European trucks. They can only carry some 24, 25 tons. It's just, I don't know. I would have had them into the side of the road and GV9'd in seconds. But that's because I'm a git, frankly.
Well, do you want to take us on to a story back in the UK that is perhaps more positive and doesn't bring out your inner policingness?
Yes. Well, there's a new battery. Well, there's not a new. There is an existing battery recycling firm in the UK called Recyclus Group. You can guess what they do from the name. They have just finished commissioning their new plant in Wolverhampton, which is a LIBAT plant. Again, innovative naming. It means you can guess that it processes lithium-ion batteries. And it, in theory, up to 22,000 tons of lithium-ion batteries.
That's a lot of write-offs.
That is a lot of write-offs. There's this article from Electrive that's linked in the show notes is saying that it's the equivalent of more than 48,000 batteries. It doesn't say here if it has to be car batteries. I think it's just any type of lithium-ion battery. And they say that the plant will recycle any of the current chemistries there. They're also saying they've got bulk liquid nitrogen tanks being installed to facilitate continuous processing. I imagine that that's for fire suppression, etc. As well as possibly, what could it be used for? It's either fire suppression or it's making it very, very cold.
Yeah, maybe part of the extraction thing, because they talk about that they will be able to process all kinds of end-of-life Li-ion batteries and lithium metal to produce, and I'm quoting here from the ElecTrive article that will be linked in the show notes, to produce black mass from critical metals that can be reprocessed and sold back into the battery supply chain. So this is all part of that circular economy that we have begun to talk about more and more. It is a very important thing because anything we can recycle means we don't have to dig it out of the ground, and also helps us to produce more batteries more quickly, because if you are still extracting from the ground but using the old stuff, etc., etc.
A company called Slicker is its partner for collecting battery waste nationwide. So any sort of type of laptop battery or whatever, they should be able to collect it so it can be recycled. So this is good. This is that urban mining that we've talked about before. As you say, circular economy, urban mining. So getting back the minerals that have been used and recycling, upcycling, whatever of those. So this is a really good thing. And it's in the UK. So that's the amount of lithium that will come out of these will save an awful lot more rock being dug out of the ground and then shipped around the world. This is good stuff.
Yes, vital. I will stick with the UK and I'll take us close to Oxford, where WAE are going to create an electric car battery plant. It's going to cost around about 20 million to implement and build, but this will be mainly targeting the heavy plant sector, which is okay, that's fine. It's not cars. We need the car battery ones as well if we're to continue to have a car industry.
Well, it's the same thing, just different scale.
But this is also, so it could help the likes of JCB and other manufacturers in the UK who are looking to build things if they don't export them. But if they export them to Europe, that'll help heavy goods vehicles or plant producers over in Europe, because it will be considered a locally produced battery, which is that rules of origin thing that we do keep bringing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and surprising amount of heavy plant is actually built in the UK. It's one of those things that we still actually do. So Volvo/Terex have a plant in Bathgate, isn't it? I hope they still have one. Making dumpers. Caterpillar have a plant further south, as well as JCB, and that kind of stuff. WAE as well do a lot of motorsport work too, with batteries for Formula E, Extreme E, and something I had to look up, which is Extreme H, which sounds very, very painful indeed, but it turns out is a hydrogen version of Extreme E.
Yeah, still can't get on board with those two.
No, we protect fragile ecosystems by driving over them. It doesn't matter what you're powered by, it just seems a bit wrong to me.
Yeah.
Every time I keep talking about the battery packs for heavy goods vehicles, the 1.4 megawatt packs, I keep thinking of 1.2 gigawatts from Back to the Future, but that's just me and my weird brain.
Okay, well, can you take your weird brain off to Brussels and tell us about there's trouble at mill for Audi?
My poor weird brain has spent quite a lot of time in Brussels in the past. Audi. We almost put this in follow-up. Audi recently launched a facelifted Q4 e-tron. And the plan was that there was going to be enough demand that they would build it both at the Zwickau plant in former East Germany, as well as at the Brussels plant. There isn't enough demand for it. It seems that not enough people want a electric, Audi-badged, mid-size coupe SUV thing. Audi have lowered the production targets for Brussels before they've even started, and really it's going to be ticking along if building them at all. The workforce are quite unsettled, according to this ElecTrive article.
On strike, I think, is the...
Well, that does make it much easier to build fewer of them.
Yes. When I saw that bit, having read the start of the article, and I saw that they're then on strike, I thought, management will be happy and go, yep, keep going, lads, because it's no chance of us building any here, because they don't have enough for the Zwickau plant as it is.
What's happening here, by the way, as well, so the new Q8 e-tron is meant to be built in Brussels, but it's not come on stream yet. Yeah, the Q8 e-tron, the Q8 e-tron Sportback thing will be built there too.
Yeah, because this ties into last week's article where the as yet unknown flagship model was being moved in terms of factories, and we were questioning quite loudly, does this indicate problems for Audi, for VW Group, all of the above, none of the above? But this is yet another slightly negative story that begins to unsettle me slightly.
And I don't know if it's positive reinforcement in my mind after the story last week, but this week, every time I've seen a story about Audi, it's been kind of negative.
They are becoming more often, which is part of the reason I threw it in the order. And it's just one to keep an eye on. And like you say, is it because we've seen one or two and now that's all we see? Or is it really there is a problem?
Which is very strange. It seems it's never been that way before.
No.
I don't think it's ever. I mean, the worst you could say is, well, Audi drivers are aggressive. And that's it. That was the trope. But there seems to be something about Audi as a company right now.
Well, Audi used to be mega important to the VW group. I mean, they controlled all the tech when it came to internal combustion engines, as we know from Dieselgate, and who was targeted for criminal charges and who wasn't.
Do you think it's been a change of management then, who's been unprepared, as well as basically a model lineup and a model strategy that was possibly not very well implemented?
Rushed out as well, which we know has happened from VW Group anyway.
The ID range, I think. Anyone that's driven the early ID3s will agree with that. I think it's hard not to.
Yeah, problems of their own making. This is, by the way. All of this is problems of their own making going back to the early 2000s.
I suppose so, yes. Andrew.
Yes, for all the joggers, this is the last article in the first part, so really do hope you are going downhill quite rapidly, or perhaps have called a taxi. But this is going to be about the Mercedes-Benz EACTROS 600, which is their long-range electric lorry, or Stormtrooper, looking at the picture that is in this Greenfleet article.
You see, you say Stormtrooper, and I think it looks a bit more like Wallace, as in cracking electric trucks, grommet.
I think that just says everything about ourselves and what we do outside of the Motoring Podcast. Our forms of entertainment.
Talking about the looks, though, before we get onto any of the tech and stuff, talking about looks, I think it's quite interesting that it is not an aggressive-looking truck. The standard Actros is quite pointy and grr, as the front of many trucks are, especially ones with very tall cabs, like the Actros or the Volvo FH or any of the others. But this one isn't. It's very much round. I'm sure it's for aero purposes, but it's very much rounded and smooth and kind of... It follows the usual sort of Mercedes EV design ethos, even in the truck, of let's make it look like the normal one, carve it out of soap and rub it a bit to smooth it off, and then that'll be it. That'll be the model.
I feel this one's
but I think it's a bit better than that.
Yes, it's the execution is much better than perhaps we've seen on some of the car versions.
Yes, they've become much better at rubbing the soap lately.
Yes. This is going to have a 310-mile range on one charge. It will have the capacity for, because of its high batteries, of 600 kilowatts hours, hence the 600 designation. And they have worked very hard at making the electric drive axle be particularly efficient, it says, on this article that's linked in the show notes. They can charge with up to 400 kilowatts, 20 to 80% in 30 minutes at a suitable charging station with suitable conditions to allow such speed as ever.
What, an output of 1 megawatt?
Yeah, I wonder how many of those are out there.
That's going to come on stream later.
When it comes to a lorry, obviously one of the questions you ask is, what about the weight? How much impact did the batteries make to all this? And they have a gross combined weight of 44 tons. And they reckon that in the EU, that has a payload of around 22 tons. And at this point, I hand over to our heavy goods vehicle expert to explain how close or not that is to a diesel.
You're losing a couple of tons, basically.
I think that's pretty
I would normally
good.
expect about 24 to 25 if you're at 44 tons. But that requires you to be on that... Here we go. Welcome to the nerdiness. That requires you to be on a 3+3 axle configuration. The one shown in the pictures here is a 2+3, and I think that means you're only allowed 40 tons, provided all 5 axles are air suspended. Now, I could be a bit rusty on that. It's been a while since I've had to think about it too much, but I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong there. One of the interesting things, now you mentioned the range earlier on, Andrew. One of the things is that Mercedes are saying that with intermediate charging, you have to stop when you're driving a truck every 3 and a bit hours. I really am rusty on my driver's hours rules. And take a break at that point for 45 minutes. Now, that works if you're doing long range driving. Of course, if you're doing shorter range, you might have to take smaller prescribed breaks of no less than 15 minutes. So, but if you can charge during those breaks, Mercedes says the truck can do over 600 miles.
Mm.
Now, that poses its own fun challenges, really, because if you can imagine a truck park with many chargers, then that's going to be drawing an awful lot of power from the grid.
There needs a lot of windmills and solar panels nearby. And by the way, before anyone ats us, we are not doing the, oh no, the national grid will fall over. We're not doing that. We're just stating
No. What I'm about
here
to say is one of the challenges there is that quite often drivers like to start in the very, very early morning and drive into the day a bit. And the challenge is that makes the whole charging overnight thing a bit harder. Unlike with cars, where you genuinely reckon it's not going to be driven overnight, and you can leave it parked and charging whilst electricity is cheaper. If you're driving your truck and you're having to take your mandated breaks around, it's going to be during the hours of daylight when electricity is a bit more expensive. So that's something that's going to be worth keeping an eye on and bearing in mind. That's the point. But I'm sure that there are ways around that.
Well, I'm also sure that there are going to be many people with spreadsheets in charges of fleets.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at this incredibly closely. But it's great to see that there are options now.
Yeah. By the way, there's a fleet of around 50 prototype vehicles is being built, some of which is to be put into practical testing with customers as the next step. So sort of alpha/beta testing of the whole idea, which is the right way to do it. There'll also be a rigid variant as well as tracked unit.
Okay. They reckon, or the plan is for full production to start at the end of 2024.
I guess you're as well showing off sort of things that are one stage beyond just being a concept when it's a truck, because it's very hard to camouflage it and for it to just fade into the background, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like battleship camouflage.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that brings us neatly, I think, to Guilt Minute, the quick break-in show where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on the hosting running. If you feel the Motoring Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of Patreon include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We also have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. If you don't have any spare cash, and we do completely understand, you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show in whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all that, and some of you do, so thank you very much, then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone that does. It does work because our listening figures continue to rise.
Yes, which is as much a shock to you and I as it is to everyone else. Is it terrible that we've been doing this for so long? It can go months between me looking at listener figures.
No, I think that is, there's the hierarchy of needs. I think there's a podcasting version of that.
All right.
And I think we are moving up the stages of having done this long enough that we realize if you keep looking at the figures, you're going to go mad.
Well, yes, because I used to do that in the early days. Yeah.
New car news.
Yes, new Toyota CHR. This has been, people I think have been on press drives in Barcelona and stuff already. Unfortunately, not us, because a bit far away for these things. And yeah, I only now have pricing and stuff and specs come out. So the new Toyota CHR starts off at £31,290. For the Icon, that gets 17-inch alloy wheels, cloth upholstery, a 7-inch entertainment screen, CarPlay, and a familiar raft of safety systems. There's a bit of a step up to design, which gets you nicer stuff. And then XL, which gets you a JBL sound system and front sports seats, as well as the nicer stuff like the bigger infotainment and the panoramic sunroof. Those three trims are all available with only the 1.8-litre hybrid powertrain, which gives 97 brake horsepower, with a 94 brake horsepower electric motor, giving a mathematically complicated 138 brake horsepower. There's also a 2-litre powertrain as well, which is shared with the new Toyota Prius, which isn't coming to the UK. Which is a shame, because the new Toyota Prius looks very, very nice. But I don't think it would sell in anything like the numbers that the CHR would, so I understand it. I think Prius sales have been down because it's so closely associated with being a taxi vehicle, even though they all drive Corollas now.
Yeah, what's interesting is the four-wheel drive plug-in hybrid option has that 2-litre petrol, but also with a beefier as it says in this Autocar article, beefier 163 brake horsepower motor for a combined 223 brake horsepower. The bit that interests me is it will also feature geofencing tech, which will automatically switch it into EV mode if you enter a low emission zone.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
It is. Just to finish off the models, though, there's a GR Sport and a Premier Edition. They cost £40,645 and £42,720, respectively. By the way, the whole Prius nobody buys it thing. 2021, CHR told 18,000, nearly 18,000 in the UK. They sold 563 Prius. If you don't buy it, you lose it.
Yes. Talking of something new we're going to get, though, and I'm going to take us to Lexus and the LBX, which is their smallest vehicle of their range, which is a crossover tiny SUV.
I think it's the smallest ever.
Yes, I think that's what they have been saying. This is based, or has similar underpinnings. Sorry, it's not based. It has similar underpinnings to the Toyota Yaris Cross because it's using the global GA-B platform. I don't know how all these companies come up with these
lovely names. It says a global architecture B segment. It's really not that complicated.
Okay.
It's like the next one up, the one we've just talked about, the CHR is on a GAC platform, which is the global architecture C segment platform. It's really, they don't make it very difficult for us.
I need a lot of charts explaining all these things to me because I can't hold all that info in my brain.
How many years? Well, you see, the trouble is I can, but I can't remember my shopping list.
Well, I can't do that either, so I don't know why I'm laughing. Anyway, back to the car. The prices are going to start at $29,995, and they will hit the top of the range at the Takumi design spec level of £40,545. There's 9 trim levels, my word.
That includes all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive variants of some of the upper specs as well.
Yeah. This is going to be the entry level for the Lexus range now. It's something you were discussing with me earlier, replacing the CRT. Was it CRT?
No, not the CRT. He's doing it on purpose now. The CT.
The CT.
Yes.
Which you did drive in Barcelona, wasn't it?
I did, yes. I drove the final.
And you made comments about how its platform was perhaps a little aged.
Yes, it was. By the time it was retired, it was sort of doddering on with a cane.
Yes.
And it felt that way, just the whole quality of the hybrid system and how pleasant it was to drive. Well, it was a bit underpowered and a bit, yeah. This should be different. I mean, it's based, say, on the Yaris Cross, which is, there's a review of this, because I had one for a week. An amazing thing, which runs mostly on air and magic. It's not an EV, but it's as close as darned it, really. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, what could be worse than what could be better for me than a Lexus based on a Yaris, for goodness sakes? I mean, it's like special Allen heaven out there. I like this. What I like most, by the way, is I looked at the picture of the interior because, of course, that's the sort of, well, why is this worth more money than the Yaris Cross, which is a perfectly decent car? They do seem to have sort of almost completely switched out the interior, and it's all, certainly the one in the picture, is all sort of pale leather and gloss black and a screen, a decent sized screen and stuff like that. So it'll be very interesting to sort of sit in it and feel what it feels like compared to the Yaris Cross.
Yes, considering you have had the Yaris Cross for a while, it would be really interesting to see if you felt there was enough of a difference. Yeah,
there doesn't seem to be a massive price hike one over t'other either.
No, but to enter the Lexus, to be considered a Lexus, that's the trick, and it is a trick. It's not going to be easy. I mean, we're talking size wise, it's going to be virtually the same as, say, the Ford Puma. So it's going to be fighting against obviously the Puma, VWs to cross, the XC40 from Volvo, and Mazda's CX-30.
The XC40 is the most likely competitor there.
Yeah. When you run through those lists,
you go, it's Ford or Toyota, or or Volvo and Volvo versus Lexus. I mean, that's far more the alignment that I think everybody's looking for.
Yeah.
The Mazda, by the way, curiously sits somewhere in between, because and if you're going to beat the interior quality of the Mazda, you're going to be doing pretty well, because Mazda are very strong on their interiors.
Yes.
Much better than most of the German brands, but nobody will ever say that.
No, except for us.
Sadly, by the way, there's a Hey Lexus speech recognition system, which is just what nobody ever needs.
Oh, I'll have to try that if I get this to try out. We'll have to try the voice recognition, because we are repeatedly told, don't worry about not having buttons and dials, because the voice recognition's fine.
Yeah, I've never made voice recognition work. I'm going to try and try.
Well, it's your incredibly strong accent, Alan, as everyone listening
I have
can
such
tell.
Strong regional tones. I mean, that said, it's off the top of your cars, but a friend of mine who's over here, very strong French accent, or quite strong French accent, could never get his Android phone to do anything. I would basically have to say it in the car and say the destination and work every time for me. And it drove him nuts. But it's my telephone, huh? Yeah.
Okay, do you want to take us to what is going to be a bit of a marathon of new Kia EVs?
Yes, brace yourselves, folks, for an onslaught of Kia EVs, some of them real, some of them not yet. And we're going to start at the bottom with the EV2. This is going to be a compact e-SUV, target price of around £25,000, coming in 2026. Still a little bit away. This is going to be a key part of the firm's ambition to reach 1.6 million EV sales annually by 2030. The EV2 is going to go up against the likes of the Peugeot E2008 Vauxhall Corsa and Mini Cooper Electric. Those of you who have been following along at home will notice that it's significantly cheaper than any of those. Kia CEO Ho Sung Song said that the EV2 is a very unique and important model for the European market. A very European dedicated model, he says, and there's a very concrete plan for it. So if I was some of the others, I'd be sort of running and hiding by this point.
Well, it's going to be interesting in this because there isn't much detail, which I think you were about to say anyway. There isn't much detail about this, and it is aimed at 2026. So much so that we've got no idea of range. One thing to announce that your vehicle is going to be $30,000 with a direct conversion into pounds of 25 grand. It'll be more than that because the UK things will happen to make it go up. There's one thing to make that aim and statement, but another thing if you're going to compete with the likes of the Corsa and the Cooper when it comes to range as well.
Well, that's not a huge deal. That's not very difficult when it comes to the Mini.
Well, no, the Mini's improved dramatically for the new model, hasn't it?
It has, yes, it has.
Yeah, I mean, if we were talking the old one, that's fine. You just use a hybrid battery.
You'd be pretty much there. Yes, that's true. And I think that's one of the reasons why folks aren't giving out loads of details, because all of that kind of stuff can easily change. And also, you don't want to give away too much of your model plan if you can get away with it.
Of course. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the first of the four we're going to talk about. So why don't you talk about the next size up, which unsurprisingly is called the EV3.
Yes, this is a baby SUV is how it's classed. And this is going to be slightly more expensive. They are aiming to start around a price of £28,500. This will be B segment.
This, by the way, is for next year. There is a little more information there. So, this will probably go up against, I don't know, some of the other stuff we've discussed. To me, this is the same size as going up against the CHR that we've just talked about.
Yeah. But they're going to keep with the exterior looks. It's an evolution of the EV9 that's due to come out to the UK very soon. The sales are already out there, or you're able to express your interest. Anyway, it's Kia's Tiger Face, and quite chunky, but not in an overtly aggressive manner. I think they've managed to keep that look quite good. I mean, at the minute we're dealing with renders here in so much of what we're discussing, but there are examples of it, and I think it looks really good. It's
got a Tonka feeling to it.
I like Kia Hyundai's electric technology. I like their interiors. I like the way that they are built and work. and that you end up not worrying about the fact it's an electric car.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think they're really on a winner with this.
Yeah. Further out is the EV4, a striking saloon for 2026. And the idea is this goes up against something like the Polestar 2. So very much more saloon style rather than an SUV style. Although it does have the kind of sloping. It looks like an EV future Stinger, if that helps. So it's got quite a long rear overhang. It's got a sort of fast back by the looks of it on the rear. And it's a decent looking vehicle. I think it's maybe less resolved in the picture stroke renderings than some of the others, especially around the interior, which very much has that sort of, dare I say it's Tesla Model 3 style. Well, it'll be nice when you've moved in type of look to it. It's coming along as well. Not really absolutely no detail around drivetrains and the like. Lots of information about hand-woven hemp fibers and that kind of thing. It's likely, it says, that they'll be offered with 215 brake horsepower front-wheel drive, 320 brake horsepower four-wheel drive versions. It won't be ultra-fast charging like the EV6 and EV9, expected around 2025.
Yep. And to round out our Kia segment, the EV5, which we don't know if it's coming to the UK, but I would be absolutely astonished if it didn't.
It's China only for the time being.
Yeah, this is an mid-sized SUV. I think we have to go. It's below the EV9.
It's hard to say these days, really, isn't it?
Yes, particularly with the renderings as well, where there's nothing to judge it against. But this is going to be aimed at family owners. I think you're looking at your cash cow, your RAV4 type size stuff.
I was going more Sorrento
that'd be the EV9
style, not the EV9.
That's the EV9.
So you're going Hyundai Tucson size then?
Yes.
That's where we're going. Okay.
Sportage.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one I couldn't think of.
This was revealed at the Chengdu Motor Show in China in August. And you get to see some of the interior. Some of you may have seen pictures put on social media where there's this really interesting addition to the front passenger seat that seems to, it's connected and meets up, goes over the central console and meets up with the driver's seat, but isn't actually connected. And I'm not sure what it's for.
Reading further into this article from Car that's on here, it says, Kia claims to have done research that shows millennial families view their EV SUV as an extension of their house, an extra room rather than means of getting to the shops. This explains why Kia has used the sort of language that's more befitting a listing in Rightmove than a car brochure in some places. Saying the interior is closer in concept and execution to a home lounge than a traditional car cabin. And that says, assuming that your lounge has everyone facing the same direction and features a steering wheel. Nevertheless, I think that is, it's a hint towards the old bench seat, and it's about making the front of it feel more like a sofa. By continuing one seat over into the other, but it can't go over into the other because the driver has to be able to adjust the seat in more ways. Yeah. Curious to see if that makes it outside of China and the Far East.
Because there is an arm rest, by the way.
Because there's that lump, and then there is, if you look closely at the pictures, there is another fold-down arm rest which goes over the top of it, so most of the time it's obscured anyway.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I like the outside, though. I'll be surprised if this is a China only.
I really like the design. I think it is very smart. It's what we've said, I think a month or so ago, we were talking about how, I think you pointed this out, that somebody was saying this, that boxiness isn't quite the right word, but boxiness is the new luxury. It is the visible expression of luxury or premium vehicles. I
don't think that was me. Design. That sounds far too deep for me.
You were quoting someone else.
Oh, right. That makes more sense.
But I really like how they've continued with the tiger face is their design language. But I think it just looks really smart. It's not over fussy, although there are creases around the vehicle, but it's still quite a very clean external look. I mean, it is an SUV, and yes, it's another one, and yes, it is going to be, largish, and there will be the usual, we all hate SUVs, etc., etc. But for most people trying to just get around their lives, this is the vehicle they want.
Yeah. holding those words about the uncluttered exterior and the good looks, let's talk about the 2024 BMW X2, shall we?
Oh, my word.
So all those things Andrew's just said about looks and good looks and unfussiness and all of that, throw it out the window, because this is bogging.
Yes.
It really is. It's just bad.
If there is ever a link in our show notes that you click this so you can see exactly how dreadful the design and what has been signed off is.
That's the amazing bit. Not just that somebody drew this sort of lumpen pustule, but that then people signed it off, especially the blue one in the M Sport spec. I mean, you do wonder if it's one of those things like the Allegro, where the original sketches were really nice and then it just got ruined and ruined and ruined. I mean, I'm sure it was very flat and wide.
I haven't seen a good-looking SUV coupe because it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Even the Volvo C30 doesn't really work for me.
Because there's just too much mass. And this has got a lot of mass.
I wonder how big those wheels are, because they look tiny, but I'll be amazed if they're anything less than 19s.
Oh, yeah, they'd have to be.
Anyway, it's there. It exists. I mean, the Q4 e-tron from Audi is not exactly selling well. I don't expect this to do a lot better, to be honest. Buy yourself an iX1 instead of an iX2, or an X1 instead of an X2. Don't buy an X1. X1's a pretty rubbish.
Interestingly, Autocar puts it up against the Cupra Formentor. When it comes to the...
Cupra Formentor is supposed to be very good.
The internal combustion engine version, that is.
Yeah, I just never got around to driving it because stuff got cancelled because COVID and stuff.
Mm.
I don't know. It's there. It exists. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
No, let's move on.
Yes, so this is another one of your favourite topics.
Yeah, Skoda has announced that they are no longer going to include SatNav as an automatic extra that is fitted to your vehicle. You will have to pay for a subscription or one-off fee if you wish to have inbuilt SatNav. Now, I put this out on social media, and it turns out I'm an outlier.
Yeah.
Because I actually do use the own brand's SatNav whenever I'm testing a car.
Fantastic. Oh, no, I use it when I'm testing a car. I use it, I then go, oh, that's all right. And then I go back to what I'm familiar with.
I can't get Apple Maps and Waze to work for me.
Well, that's you.
There is one town close to me that those never, ever, ever get right.
That's because nobody ever travels out of them, those towns.
Well, yeah,
it's all six
you
figures.
really don't want to, that's for sure. Yes.
There's a hint there. It's trying to save you, Andrew.
Yes, but it's too late.
If I have a Prescott, I will trial the in-vehicle nav, and I will use it a bit. And sometimes it's very useful, especially if it's an EV. It tends to have better find me a charge point nav.
Mm.
But otherwise, I will normally use CarPlay, I'll use CarPlay. I won't use Android Auto. I use CarPlay, and I think that's basically what they're saying. There's quite an interesting.
They are experimenting with this. They're making it clear that this is not one of those, and this is how it will be for the future. They want to see if there is a backlash, and I think that's refreshing. Of course, they have to. They have to test this. If they don't have to develop or sign a contract with a supplier, it will save them money. So of course they want to explore this.
Yeah,
I get it. But it's the implication of other stuff they want to add to subscriptions. And
this Autocar article by Nick Gibbs, there's many quotations from a chap called Martin Jan, who is the head of sales marketing at Skoda. And I think it's incredibly pragmatic in this. He's saying there is interest, but it's nothing life-changing. It's something we're testing. For me, the reason why people buy a car is how it feels, how it drives, and how much luggage it holds. But you have to explore this. Owners of electric cars are more likely to download features than those of ICE vehicles, he said. And Skoda could have dropped SatNav entirely, but doesn't want to yield the job of route guidance completely to Apple and Google. And he says some people will never use native SatNav, but we don't want to give up this space. Where I find it's useful is when you're somewhere where you don't have phone coverage or data coverage. But I also noticed the latest version of Apple Maps lets me download maps in advance for areas. It was one thing I found when I was out west. I did have to use the Lexus SatNav a couple of times just because there was no coverage, and all I got was a grey grid on my phone, and it just went, no, sorry. Whereas the inbuilt SD card.
Yeah. Other things that will also be subscription or one-off fee extras for is automatic headlights and adaptive cruise control.
Yeah, some people never use adaptive cruise control, but all the tech's there, so it'll still be being used for the safety stuff. It just feels like penny pinching.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, isn't it? To get your stars.
Yeah, to get your stars, you need that, but you don't need adaptive cruise. And people normally just throw in adaptive cruise because it's there. This is all the fault of Tesla. This gross decontenting of cars is all the fault of Tesla and the fact that they've gone off and they've shown that they can get away with it. But they can get away with it just now when they're still on relatively early adopters and whilst they're just stripping everything out to drop the price and drop the price and drop the price, which is going to backfire because it's going to have to.
Yeah.
The irony of electric cars backfiring. There we go. But yeah, they're just stripping the price, dropping the price because they make their money through selling the credits, don't they?
Anyway, do you want to take us to points of interest and start with, well, what is shown British social media to be absolutely full of lunatics?
It's kind of one of the reasons why I'm not on it that much, not nearly as much as I used to be. Yes, we've not talked about the Luton Airport garage fire. Partly because there's a certain amount of there, but for the grace of God go I, because I used to have my car in that car park every week. That's lucky. But mostly because it just got very stupid very quickly. And we're not going to talk about how stupid it got very, very quickly, really. Other than observing that the stupidest people on some of the social media do seem to be the ones with national flags or the ones with whatever form of verification, inverted commas, that is available to you by paying a small fee to have your opinions amplified and then receive money back. Rather than us going on about it, I thought, and how dumb people were, I thought I would let Jason Torchinsky do it instead. So this week's lunchtime read is from the Utopian, and it's an interesting view from an outsider's view on just how that looked and a commentary on the quality of opinions and the quality of fact or otherwise being shared. Linky, as always, in the show notes to the Utopian. Good stuff there.
Yep. List of the week. And this comes from Top Gear. And amazingly, it is not a top 9. It is the 19 vans you never knew you wanted. Now, Alan, you probably did want a van.
I know I want quite a few of these, but the one that I want most of all is the Renault Fourgonette, which I almost bought in the past. So the Renault 4 van with its little draft hatch and everything. Very, very cool.
It is. It is very cool.
So yes, that's my choice from here. There's lots of other good ones, although I do see they do seem to have chosen basically the same van about 3 times, but that's what happens when you choose Kai vans, because they are basically only 3 variants of Kai van. They're just badged by many different things.
Yeah.
What about, there's 19. I think there's room for you to choose one anyway as well.
Well, I will pick the Dodge A100, mainly because I saw one in real life at a random village motor show a couple of summers ago with a gorgeous amount of patina on it.
All right.
That was driven, according to the owner, driven daily.
Mm-hmm.
And it just looked fab. And amazingly how tiny it is.
They are. So I saw the Ford
anyway.
The Ford equivalent, which isn't listed in here, the early Ford Econolines. It's not part of this list. I was in Newport at the weekend, and there was Newport, Rhode Island. It's not like Newport, South Wales. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Thank goodness. Can you imagine the America's Cup starting from Newport, South Wales?
Oh,
they've stolen
twice.
They've stolen half the boat.
Other towns that have horrific reputations
Other
are available in the UK.
Available. Yes, I spent quite a lot of time there, or trying to avoid being there. Yeah, and it was similar thing. It was just so small. Same format, cab forward, and you just sometimes you look at these, and then you look at what's on the roads here now, and you just think, where did it go wrong?
Yes.
What happened? Why the bloat? And finally this week is the and finally that we're going to have last week. But we pushed out Jimmy Buffett in favor of Ian Seabrook last week. So we feel it's only right that the late Jimmy gets his entry this week. And the reason to talk about Jimmy Buffett is that there has been a bill filed in Florida to rename State Road A1A, a coastal highway that spans from Key West to Fernandina Beach in the north in order of Jimmy Buffett. So yes, the Jimmy Buffett Memorial Highway is a potential name for the future. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty cool. I don't know if there's anywhere called Margaritaville en route, but no doubt there are. Actually, I watched a really good video on YouTube, by the way, about, I've forgotten the chap's name now. He's got the most amazing moustache. But he and a friend previously did all the rainforest cafes in the USA.
Right.
And he visits all of the Margaritavilles in the US and Canada. And it's worth a watch. It's very good. Definitely not sponsored by Margaritaville, but yeah, it's and it was done before Jimmy passed away. So there we go. Something a bit different to end on. Any parish notes this week, Andrew?
No.
Don't think so. Oakley doke. That takes us kicking and screaming to the usual ending. So don't forget that between now and next week, you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts with the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon, and please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you these days?
Best way to get in touch with me is via either Twitter or Mastodon. If you search for Cracked Windscreen, you should find me there. And Alan, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you personally if they wish to?
With me, it's either Twitter or Blue Sky these days. Usual username of @AJP Bradley. That's BRADLEY. We'll be back very soon. But until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.